welcome back to Opal&Mint. I am Ashley. If you are new to this channel, I do all kinds of things. Anything artistic, and I'm all over it. But today we're going to be talking about watercolor, back to the basics. If you've never touched watercolors in your life, I'm going to show you how to do it. Show you how to load your brush. I'm going to show you all the basic techniques and make it to where it's not as intimidating going into painting something with watercolors. So watercolor 101, back to the basics, that's what we're doing today. We're gonna get to top down of me painting for this, but I did want to show my face on here and explain what we're doing. So again, this video is for those who are brand new to watercolors, but if you've been watercoloring for a while, you might still learn a few things, or it might just be some good drills and practice for you. Also, make sure you stay tuned. I will build on this video. We will get more advanced as we go, but I don't want to start with some big watercolor floral arrangement without going through these basic techniques and steps. If you don't know how to load your brush properly, you're not going to be able to paint a big, beautiful floral. So today it's all about the basics. So first of all, watercolor is a transparent medium, so do not treat it like acrylic. We're gonna go starting with that fact, okay? With watercolors, you go from light to dark. So whatever your lightest, your highlights are, you need to preserve those white spaces or light spaces, and then you build on that. Acrylic, you can always add white on top of something as a highlight. Watercolor, you cannot do that. So you need to carefully plan out your painting a lot more strategically when you are doing watercolors. Just remember that, start out light, and then we'll build the deeper colors, okay? With those things in mind, we're gonna go ahead and get into painting. I'm gonna show you, I'm gonna talk about brushes, I'm gonna talk about paper, I'm gonna talk about different types of paint and what you need to start. And we're gonna get into the basic techniques. All right, so now we're at my art desk, and before we actually put paint to paper, I want to talk about supplies first, because you can't paint if you don't have the paper and the whatnot. Okay, first off, we're going to talk about paper, and one that you can find easily and that is fairly inexpensive is the Canson XL watercolor. This is one that I recommend starting with, just so you can learn some techniques. It's not a super high quality, but it is heavy, and it'll be good for practicing. And so I have this as a starter paper, and this is what we're going to use today. But I do recommend, if you're actually getting serious into watercolor and you want to get those beautiful bleeds and transitions, I do recommend that you use a 100% watercolor, 100% cotton paper. Now, there's a couple of options. On the cheaper end, we have B paper. So this is B Paper Company. Oh yeah, the focus is down here because this is 100% cotton, and these are 6x9 papers, and these are great for medium-sized paintings. For smaller paintings, and they're like 50 of these to a pack, and it's fairly inexpensive for 100% cotton paper. Here is the B paper in a spiral bound notebook. I use this to do a lot of the technique examples, is what I'm trying to say. So the B paper is a great option for beginning cotton paper, but it's not my favorite. It doesn't stay wet as long as some of the others, but it is a good option if you're on a budget. Okay, other options in the beginning that I would suggest getting some of these little notebooks. These are from Field Artist. Well, this one is, and this one's Strathmore. But I like these because you can just paint a whole bunch of random things in them. And all this, none of this needs to be perfect. It's just, this is what you need to do when you first start. You start practicing. Some of it's good, some of it's bad, but just get a little journal. That way it's all in one. You don't have like loose papers everywhere, because that gets a little cumbersome to keep track of. So I will link all of the options that I just said in the description below, so you can find those. Okay, let's move on to brushes, and then we'll talk about paint. I'm going to try and breeze through this, but I have several different brush options, but is that loud? Let me get my favorites out. Okay, so these have been by far my favorite brushes. For the style of painting I do, they're round brushes. They come to a really, really nice point, and these actually are not too bad. So I have a size 4 a size 6 and a size, oh, these are both 8s. Why is they? They're both 8, but they're different sizes. I guess they're from different collections, but they are from Hobby Lobby, and they are, okay, so these are actually different ones, but these right here are from the Artist Touch, and they are from Hobby Lobby, so they're not too expensive. They're easy to find, and they come to a really, really nice point. Again, I'm gonna link some of my favorite brushes below. I really like this one as well. This one's the Fine Touch, and I think it's the same brand as these. Nope. I really do like Princeton brushes, but they're not the ones that I actually gravitate towards. So here's a Princeton Select brush, and it doesn't come to as fine of a point as these. So if you want me to go more in detail about different supplies, I will later, but I don't want this to be too long. Anyways, I'm gonna use the Artist Touch size 4 today. Okay, all that said, paints. We are not gonna go in depth too much with paints. If you are just starting out, this is what I recommend you get. You can get this, I believe, from Hobby Lobby. It's also on Amazon. This is the Winsor and Newton Cotman. So this is the student grade. These are not the professional ones, but they are still very, very good. And it's all your basic colors. You can mix pretty much anything you want from this set of colors. And this is what I started with. So this is what I recommend if you're just starting out. Now, if you want more options and you want some more vibrant colors, some more easy convenience colors, this set of paints is extremely vibrant and pigmented. So this is also a good one to start with. These are tube paints. So these come from Mission Gold, and they are on Amazon, and you just buy the little palette and you fill up the paints in here. Okay, so watercolor paints come in either already cured pans or they come in tubes. Now with the tubes, you can work from the paint directly from the tube, but you waste a lot of paint that way. So in my opinion, the best way to do it is to squirt your paints in your pans and let them cure. Let them dry all the way through, and that's how we're gonna be using paints today. So I'm gonna be showing you how to use cured paints, okay? So today we're gonna use the Mission Gold. If you want to get fancy, the Daniel Smith are the ones that I use now. These are the paints that I like. These came in pans and these were all tubes, but I have a full set of Daniel Smith paints and I love them. Okay? Okay, supplies are out of the way. Now we're gonna actually get to painting. Okay, so now you have all the supplies to paint. Now what do? You look at this and you're like, how on earth do I get the colors to the paper? So there's a couple of ways to do this. Some people spray their palettes with water. I don't do that. I think it's a waste of time. There's no point, in my opinion, no point to do that. So this is how I do my paints. Now, there's no right or wrong, just so you know. I mean, there could be a wrong way, I guess. I saw some wrong ways. Anyways,
I could think of a couple of wrong ways to get your paints wet.
Yes. Okay, so step 1 is getting paint on your brush. So these are watercolors, these are cured paints. So you can't just stick your brush in there and get paint, they're dry. What you do is you get your brush wet, and then, whoops, I was trying to decide what color I wanted. And then you go into a paint. Now, a lot of people's instinct is to go from the paint to the paper, and I'm gonna tell you not to do that. If you are more experienced and you can tell how much paint versus water and pigment is on your brush, sure, go ahead and do that. But for beginners, you take that paint and you swirl it on your palette. Now, why do we do this? Because you have no idea the concentration of paint that's on your brush. Every paint re-wets and reactivates at a different rate. Sometimes you can scrub and have a little bit. Sometimes you touch it and it's completely saturated. So this one is pretty saturated. So I'm gonna dip into water and I'm going to dilute this some more. So this is how you can tell the amount of pigment that you have on your brush. So as we are going through this and as we're going through all these techniques, there's gonna be different viscosities of paint. So that means the thickness or thinness of the paint. So the amount of water to pigment is what we're talking about. So you're gonna learn to recognize what this right here looks like and what it would look on a page. And then if you add more water, you can see it gets thinner and it will be a lighter color on the page. We're gonna get to that, but this is the basics of how you get paint on your brush. Okay, so now we have paint on our brush. Now we're gonna dive into my techniques worksheet, okay? I'm going to, I don't know how to link things on like a picture in the comments. Can you do that?
I don't know.
I'm going to show the worksheet on the page right now. These are the techniques that we're going to be going through. And hold on, actually, I can put it on the table. All right, so our first technique is we're going to do a color fade. So we need to start with a thicker amount of paint. So you see I'm getting this right here. This is thicker paint. I'm going to get that on my brush, and then I'm just going to do a couple of swipes of this. And then we're going to dip our brush in the water, wipe off the excess, and then do a couple of more. And then I'm going to clean it off. Rub it around in there, dry it off, and then we're going to fade out that line even further. Now with watercolors, they are very time sensitive. Once they dry, they're not going to bleed and fade like this, okay? So when we're doing any techniques where we're having a soft blend, you need to make sure you're working quickly, because you can actually see right here, that dried a tiny bit right there. And all the paints are gonna be different, but there is a color fade, okay? All right, the next technique we're gonna do is color lifting. So let's take another color. I'm gonna use this teal color right here. So again, I got my brush really wet, and you can see on this brush, that one picks up very easily. And again, this is why we go on to our palette, okay? All right, so I'm gonna do a nice flat wash circle. What is a flat wash? A flat wash is what it sounds like. It's just an even wash of color, okay? So we're just gonna paint a circle, and do not worry too much. My brush is a little bit dry. Got a little bit more water. Do not worry too much about having a perfect circle. That is not the point of this exercise, okay? All right, so try and make it as even as possible, and then what you're gonna do is you're going to wipe your brush on your paper towel. That's another thing, I didn't talk about the supplies there. I will in just a second. And then you're going to just wipe up color, wipe it on your paper towel, wipe up color, and this, my friends, is color lifting. So I will show you how we use this in a painting, but super easy. You just lift pigment up and wipe it on your towel, and that is color lifting. Okay, back to the supplies. I'm so sorry. You also need paper towels. I always have paper towels and 2 cups of water. I have one for my dirty water and one for my clean water. The reason you need clean water is sometimes you put water on your paper first, and if it is colored, it's gonna have that color on the paper. So you need dirty and you need clean. All right, so we have our color fade and we have our color lifting. So far, we're doing good, right? Next, we're gonna learn how to color mix. Now, this, I'm not gonna go into detail right this second of what colors mix with what colors to make what colors. This is just the mechanics, you might say, of mixing 2 colors. So I showed you how to get a color onto your palette. Now, basically, to mix a color, you just add another color on top of that, okay? But let's say, let me clean the spot off. If you have a palette and you want to clean a spot off, get it wet, and then just wipe it off with a paper towel, and then you have a clean spot, okay? Okay, so let's say you don't have anything on your palette. I'm going to show you how you mix 2 colors. So I'm going to go into this blue, and I'm going to put some blue on here. Now, to make green, I'm going to add yellow. So you can go straight into yellow from here. You will get blue in your yellow. If you are a very neat kind of person and you don't want to get other colors on your other colors, that's fine. Wash your brush off and then go into the yellow. But my point in saying this is don't worry too much about mixing your colors up. I mean, you don't want to do that dramatic amount, but having a little bit on top is not going to be a big deal because these are cured, they're dried, so it's not going to go down into the color. You can always wipe the surface of it off. Wipe the surface of it off.
Wipe the surface off.
Wipe the surface of the paint off and that color will be gone. Okay, so and then you just mix those two colors on your palette and you have a color. So I'm gonna take this green and I'm just gonna paint a heart. You can do whatever. This is not, this is just going through the exercise of mixing paint. This is not like you have to paint a certain thing. This is just evidence that you mixed a color. Does not have to be perfect. Just do a flat wash of color. You can do a square, you can do a circle. I really don't care. Just show your work that you have paint or mixed two colors together, okay? It's not perfect, totally fine.
It's a pretty heart.
I like the color.
It's a really pretty color.
Okay, the next one, we're getting a little bit more advanced, but do not be afraid. It's not that bad. We're doing another color fade, but we're doing a 2-color fade, okay? So I'm gonna take the green I've just mixed and I'm gonna fade it into yellow. Can I fit it there? I'm gonna try to fit it there. Okay, the way I do this, I'm gonna take my green, and again, this needs to be fairly saturated so that you have color on there, but I would normally do a thicker paint right here, but this is fine. I'm going to wash that off. I'm going into the yellow. And then I'm going to put a little bit of yellow here. I'm going to wash that off, wipe it off, tap a little bit, and then I'm going to put clean water here and fade it into the yellow. And then wash it off again, because if you go straight over here, you're going to get yellow on that green. So we're fading this in. Now this green wasn't as thick, so it's fading away a little bit more, but there are several ways you can do these color fades. You can do one layer and let it dry and then do another layer. I really want more green. My green's disappearing. Hold on. See, look, I'm gonna go right into my yellow. Oh no. That would drive some people crazy. Okay, here we go. Oh, there we go, we got some more green. Okay, so then I'm gonna dry my brush off as much as possible and try and fade that green out a little bit. Okay? Play around, do that a few times, play with your colors, and yeah. So there is a 2-color fade. And when we get through all these techniques and drills, you might say, I'm going to show you how you implement all these things into a petal or into a leaf or whatever you might be painting, okay? All right, next up, we're going to get to some fun stuff. This requires no skill whatsoever. This is so much fun, and you're going to enjoy it, I promise. Okay, so I'm going to take this beautiful, beautiful shade here, and I'm just going to do a flat wash. Now, what does that mean? A nice, even color, okay? So we're just going to do a square here, a flat wash of this beautiful shade. Now, while this is still wet, remember, you have to work quickly with some of these techniques. While it's still wet, I'm gonna get, wow, I should have picked this out first, huh? I'm gonna get some of that blue on here, and I'm just going to, well, get it, it needs to be a little bit wet.
I was gonna say,
tap it in. The paint was too dry, that's why. The wetter your paint on your brush is, the further it will travel. So if it seemed delayed for some reason. So if your paint's really dry, it's not going to move as far. Just know that when you're doing this technique, you can control how far it moves based on how much water is on your brush, okay? So this is color dropping, and again, I'm going to show you how this would be used in a real painting. Now, if you notice, the center of this is already dry. That's because this is a cheaper paper. It's not 100% cotton, so it dries a lot faster. If you use a nicer paper, you have more time to play with this because you see these dry spots, it's not as pretty. So just know that if yours is not doing exactly what this looks like, it may not be you, it could be your paper, okay? Don't be too hard on yourself. Okay, next up, we're gonna do what is called wet and wet. Now technically this is wet and wet, but we're gonna do wet and wet. We're gonna wet the paper first and then put color on instead of putting color on and then color on top, okay? So we're gonna take our clean water and a clean brush, and I'm going to just paint a square of,
oh,
it's okay.
I hit the mic.
That's fine. We're just gonna paint a square of water, okay? Nice, we don't want any puddles, so if it's too wet, kind of pick some of that up and dab it off, but we just want a wet square. I guess this paper does dry quick, so
it does dry really quickly.
Yep, so I'm just trying to get this nice and even. Okay, so now you're gonna take your paints and I want you just to play, okay? Don't mix like too many where it just turns into brown, but play around, see what happens when you add water or add paint into water that is already on the paper, okay? And then as it dries, watch how it changes, watch how it moves, watch how the color changes. Your paints will not look the same wet as they do dry. So do keep that in mind. They will slightly change. They'll either get lighter or darker depending on the color. So get to know your paints. And yeah, I want a little bit more. Let's see, is it still wet? Yeah, oh, look at that. Yeah, I did a little shiver. That's pretty. Sorry, I got too excited, people. Oh, and so different paints also react different. There are some paints that are what we call pushy. Pushy paints push other colors out of the way, and that right there is a pushy paint. I love it. I love it. You play with it, see how you can manipulate it. I love it.
This without any context sounds horrible.
What does?
Manipulate it.
Push it, pushy. Okay, we're doing good. Okay, we've mastered some of the basic things that you will need. Learn these right here. Practice these. If you need to pause and do these over and over, learn how to do these. And once you get these down, it's going to be so much easier to actually do the paintings, okay? We're going to learn layering. So watercolors are transparent, like I said, and they're made for layering. So we start with our lightest colors, and then we layer our darker colors on top. So whatever color you put on top, whatever color is underneath is going to change the way the color on top looks. And this is what we're demonstrating here. Okay, so I'm going to take some yellow. Whoo, that's pigmented. See, I didn't put it on the palette. I went straight to the paper. That is why, my friends. Okay, so I'm just going to do a square of yellow. So we're going to let this dry before we continue because layering is not wet on wet. Layering, we need to let it dry, okay? So the next one is also a layering, so we're gonna go ahead and paint it. While that's drying, we're gonna take some green. I'm gonna add a touch of red. Get some of this that's on here. And I'm gonna paint a leaf shape. Now this does not have to be a perfect leaf, just this shape, a blobby shape, okay? And again, just do a flat wash. And it doesn't even have to be a green leaf. Do whatever color leaf you want. We're just learning the techniques right now, okay? So there's a green leaf. We're gonna let those dry. While those are drying, we're gonna do a very, very fun technique called lifting, but we're gonna lift in a different way, okay? We are going to show you how you lift to make details. We're gonna get some blue. Now there's already some blue on my palette, so I don't have to go in and get blue. I just activate the paint that's on here. Tick, tick, tick. Activate this paint. We don't need to waste it. We don't need to waste this paint. Use it. Okay, so whoop, see that is dry. Need some more water. And I'm going to paint a nice even square of blue. This is going to be a sky. Now this we do have to work quickly. So again, this cheaper paper is going to dry faster. So I'm going to put a little more water on here. All right, so next you're gonna take a little piece of a paper towel and you're gonna scrunch it up, okay? Now you're gonna lift this paint off with the paper towel. So you just tap in little cloud shapes. Look at that. It's the easiest thing in the world. Oh my gosh. Look.
Probably the easiest way to do clouds, honestly.
So, look at that. That took me 2 seconds. There's a cute little sky with clouds, okay? Lifting details, perfect. Okay, these aren't quite dry. Whoops, got a fingerprint there. So let's go on to dry brushing. So, dry brushing is kind of what it sounds like. Your brush is gonna be a little bit more dry. So I've cleaned my brush off and I wiped it on the paper towel. I'm going to pick up some paint. Actually, let me show you to do it this way. Actually, we're gonna get our brush wet. I'm gonna get a little bit more blue and put it over here. Now, our brush is pretty wet, so how do we make it dry? The battery was overheating. Oh, shoot. Okay, so we have a lot of pigment and we have a lot of water. What we're gonna do is take the side of the brush and tap it on here and it soaks up that water, okay? So dry brushing, we're gonna put the brush on its side and swipe. And you see how it gets that texture? If it's too dry, it'll skip like this. I could probably have it a little bit wetter, but there we go, there we go. If you are not getting the skipping, dry it off some more on your paper towel. But we can use this for details and texture. Different brush shapes do this differently, but there is dry brushing. I went ahead and did another color dropping one. This one dried so funky. Look how much this one moved. So that also shows you how different it looks dry versus wet. So this is all about practicing and knowing what your particular paints and papers do. Okay, so this is our layering square. This is the color dropping I did again. It's still wet, but the layering square. So we're gonna show you what it looks like when you layer colors on top of colors. So I'm gonna take a blue on top of this yellow. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna paint on the outside of the square and on the square. So you see the difference of what the blue looks like on blank paper versus over that yellow. I just touched that and that's wet, so that messed it up. So layering things, just know whatever you're putting a color on top of, that underneath color is going to show through and change whatever color you're putting on top, okay? So again, that's just part of the planning process of your painting. So I'm gonna take this purpley color, let's make it more pink. And I feel like my brush is a little too wet, so I'm dabbing just the edge to dry it off. I'm gonna put just a tiny little rose here, and again, you can do some polka dots, whatever, just put a color on top, just so you can see what it looks like to have color on top of color, okay? Okay, so you can see this is not a vibrant pink as it looks here because it's on top of that yellow. Make sense? So now we're going to talk about using layering for details. So this is a flat wash of a leaf. Now we're going to take some green, and I want to take a little bit, normally I like to go a little bit darker of a green than what the actual leaf is. Whoops. Now let's get a little orange, who cares? Now that's brown, that's a beautiful brown. Let's get a little bit more green here. There we go. Okay, so this is a pretty thick consistency of paint, and I want to get most of this off because I don't want it to spread a lot. For details, you want your paint to not be super, super watery, okay? There are exceptions, I'll go over that later. But okay, so you're just gonna take the tip of your brush, and you're going to paint a line curving down the center of your leaf. And again, we are practicing. This does not have to be perfect. If your line is super fat, that's fine. We're just showing layering details, okay? And then I'm just gonna take it and put some more lines coming off the edge of that. And there you go. There is a layered detail leaf. Make sense?
Every time you ask a question, I like almost answer it. I'm like, yeah.
You can answer, that's fine. Kylie's here. Okay, next up.
They can hear me.
Yeah. Next up, we're going to be blending out a line. So we're going to get a fairly, I want to see what this color is. A fairly thick consistency of paint here. It's a beautiful blue. So a fairly opaque color, and I'm going to just draw a line of this color. Okay? Then I'm going to wash my brush off. Just wipe the edge, and then I'm just going to go along that edge to blend that color softly out, okay? So this will be implemented in things where you want to blend out a line, like I'll show you later, but get that line and then get some clean water and just blend out that edge, okay? So we're gonna go into basic leaf shapes, okay? Do basic leaf strokes. So we're gonna go over the anatomy of the brush. This is the tip of the brush and the belly of the brush. So when you're doing a leaf, you're gonna start the tip of your brush, you're gonna push down the belly of your brush, and then lift up to the tip of your brush, okay? So I want you just to practice that a few times. Let me zoom you in a little bit. If you want it a little bit fatter, we're gonna go on the other side. Tip of the brush, belly of the brush, tip of the brush, and you have a beautiful little leaf shape. Okay? Now, some things I've noticed people do when they're doing this that I'm not going to say is incorrect, but just maybe a little bit incorrect. So you're doing a curve on each side, so you automatically think that you need to curve your brush out. Well, I have a hard time doing it the wrong way. So a lot of people will curve out and curve out like that. Now, there's nothing technically wrong with doing that, but this is a simple, easy way to do a quick leaf shape. And if you keep your brush straight, this pen is not waterproof, so it's gonna bleed, but I don't care. Okay, so you're gonna keep along this line, and the curve happens with the belly of the brush. So your tip starts here, you're following this line, but you're pushing the belly, and then you're lifting. So you're staying on that line though, okay? So tip, belly, tip, but you're keeping your brush along that line. Does that make sense? So again, tip, belly, tip. And now the shape of your leaf is determined by how long you're pushing the belly, how quickly, and how far you're going with your tip and all that, but this is a basic leaf shape, okay? We'll expand upon that in a minute, but practice that, draw some lines with a pencil or something, and practice keeping your hand, the brush on a line. So next we're gonna do some line drills. So again, we're gonna be working on using different parts of our brush. So I'm gonna take my pretty purpley pink here, and we're gonna be using the tip of the brush for this. So what I like to do is twist my brush in the paint to get it to a nice fine point. Now, we're gonna hold it vertically like this, and you're going to move your arm. Here, let me zoom out so you, well, you're gonna move your arm like this. You're not gonna move your wrist or your fingers. All this is locked, and you're moving your arm across the paper, okay? So we're keeping our wrist and our fingers still. We're just gonna touch the tip of the brush, and you're gonna move the arm, okay? So just as fine as you possibly can. You're just, think of a printer head, okay? You're moving at your elbow.
This is also good advice for drawing in general when you want to draw a straight line.
So do a bunch of fine lines, and then I want you to, same thing, but push that belly, okay? Get a thick line, okay?
Push that belly.
So you know you need more water when you start getting this dry brushing, okay? So push it, get some fat lines, okay? There we go. So we've got tip and we've got belly. Make sense? Now we're gonna do the tip, belly, tip. So this is the stroke that makes your leaves, okay? You're gonna start at the tip, push the belly, and then end with the tip, okay? Do this a bunch of times. Tip, belly, tip. Try to make it as smooth of transition as you can. And again, it's not always gonna be perfect. And the length that, I'm talking and doing this, so it's kind of weird, but the length that you have it pushed down changes the shape. So if I am just doing whoop, whoop, changes the shape, okay? So just do tip, belly, tip. Once you're comfortable with that, I want you to do a line all the way across your page, going tip, belly, tip, belly, tip, belly. Is that funny?
A little bit.
Okay. All right, so we're gonna go all the way across the page. You ready? Tip, belly, tip, belly, tip, belly. It's really hard to do and talk and have a camera in my face. Okay, they're getting more, okay. Anyways, do that all the way across the page. Try and make it a little bit more even. Practice that. So I want you to practice your tip strokes, your fat belly strokes, and then tip, belly, tip. Do that till you feel a little bit more comfortable. And now that we've learned all these techniques, I'm going to show you how to implement these techniques in something you're painting. So we're not going to do a big painting right now. We're going to do maybe a flower petal, and I'm going to show you how you can use these different techniques to make your flower petal look more three-dimensional. Okay, we're going to leave this here so we have the reference of the different techniques that I'm talking about. But I'm going to show you, actually it looks like the water would fit better right here. So this first technique, we are going to do the color dropping, okay? So we're just gonna paint one petal, so we're not doing a whole flower, we're just gonna paint a petal, okay? Keep saying okay like you can respond. All right, so I'm gonna do a fairly light wash. So I got some paint, I added some more water. This is the consistency of my paint. So you will get to learn the different consistencies and how they look on your paper, but showing you what mine looks like as I swirl it around. Okay, so I'm just gonna do a very generic petal shape. Okay, so I'm just gonna do like a rounded petal. Okay, so this is where the petal is going to meet the center of the flower. Okay, so from there, while this is still wet, I'm going to get more paint. So I'm dipping back in to get a thicker consistency of paint. I don't want to add more water to the page, so I'm going to tap the belly of the brush on there, and then I'm just going to color drop this darker pink at the base of this petal, okay? And then you'll see as this starts to dry and it spreads into there, it's gonna add a little bit of depth to the center of that flower. So picture this being the middle of it and all of your petals have this beautiful darker color coming out. Now you can even drag that down the center so that you have definition down the center. Now it's doing a little bit of blooming because I had water on my brush. Let me get back into the dark paint. It's already drying on this paper. The edges of that petal are already dry. Oh my gosh. Anyways, that is a really, really, really bad example. Let's try another one, shall we? Let's do another petal. So again, nothing super fancy. I want to get more water on this. If you get too much water, then you run into some other issues, which I will go over at some point, but it needs to be wet enough. So work quickly, get the paint, tap off the excess water, and then we're just going to tap some of this pigment down at the base of this. Okay, and then I'm just gonna drag it a little bit down the center. Okay, I think that one's gonna do a lot better. Okay. So in combination of this technique, if it is still wet, we can do some color lifting to do some highlights. So you can lift color along the sides of that darker line to add in some highlights to your flower petal, okay? Now again, this is super basic and I'm not showing you an entire flower, but just knowing these are the techniques that you use wet on wet. So these are things that your petal still needs to be wet to do, okay? So there's wet on wet and wet on dry. Now wet on dry is our layering technique that we did. We waited for it to dry and then we used wet paint on top of it, okay? So if you hear people talking about wet on wet and wet on dry, that's what we're talking about. Okay, so there's some of the techniques. We've got color dropping, we've got color lifting, and then there will be layering. So once that dries, you can add in some more details if you would like. Okay, let's see, what other ones can we try? Okay, we're gonna do something really, really fun. We're gonna do a flower, okay? But I'm gonna show you how you can do this technique. And it's kind of a wet on wet. I just put that on top of there, so I ruined my flower petal, but that doesn't matter. We're just here to show you how to do this. Okay, so I'm gonna take a fairly thick paint. So I'm getting more, this is a little bit more buttery consistency. Nice thick paint. And then I'm going to do, I can't paint on the back of that. I'm getting it everywhere. I'm going to do a ring of dots of this blue. And then I'm going to quickly grab a little bit of yellow and put a couple of yellow dots. Okay, now I'm going to wash my brush off. I'm going to get some clean water, and with that clean water, I'm going to start here and just pull out. Okay, just in a general leaf shape, petal shape, excuse me. So getting some water, we're starting here, and we're just going to pull that out. And this is a wet on wet technique. Now I didn't quite have enough blue here. Let's going to add a little bit more. So I'm color dropping, as you can see, and now that color is going to spread. Yeah, and we get wet, and we're just making some very, very light petal shapes, okay? And we're not trying to make a masterpiece right now. We are practicing, right? Now if you want to add a little bit more yellow, get just yellow on your brush. You can just tap it in there and watch it blend. Okay? Okay, there's something that I didn't include that I totally forgot to. After teaching a class in person, I realized a lot of people don't know how to do a very, very light wash of a color. So I'm going to show you how to do that. We're going to start dark. We're going to, oh my word, we're going to start dark. We're going to start dark and go lighter, okay? So we're going to take just a pure color. Let's not mix anything. What color should we do? I like this. I'm going to take this like turquoisey color on the end. And I'm just going to put it right here on my palette, okay? We've got a nice thick consistency of this paint, okay? I want you to paint a square with that you have on your brush. Now, what I want you to do with your brush next is you're going to take it, you're going to dip it once in the water, just dip and then swipe on the edge of the cup, and you're going to do another square. Now, after you do this, you will notice it's a little bit lighter. You haven't done anything but add more water. So again, we're going to dip, swipe, and get lighter, okay? And we're going to do one more time. I'm going to kind of wiggle it in there. Swipe. Now, a lot of this might be the color of the water at this point, whatever water I'm using. But there, you see it's a very, very light wash. So I want you to practice this with a couple of different colors. I want you to do a dark to light gradient with different squares. So just dip in the water, wipe off the edge, and get your nice gradient.
Beautiful color.
It is a beautiful color. I love that. But you need to know how to do this. You need to know what your consistencies of paint looks like. So if you go straight into this blue, what is that going to look like on the paper? Okay? You need to practice these things and learn what they look like, because if you are going to go do a very, very faint detail of pink and it ends up being super thick and dark, and that's not what you wanted, you can get very frustrated. So I'm going to take this pink and I'm going to water it down. Okay, I'm going to water it down, and I don't want a whole lot of water on my brush, but I want a lighter color. So I'm going to water this down, and then I'm going to tap the edge of my brush on the paper towel, and then I'm going to take this petal, I'm getting all over this other stuff, and I'm going to use the tip of my brush so it is a light color, but it's not super wet. And then we're just going to do little lines like this, okay? So you can have more detail in your paintings. Just know more water to pigment ratio. If you got more water, it's going to be a lighter wash. And you can do this to add shadows under things too. You should have a very, very light wash of something to add a shadow. So we'll get more in depth in other videos, but I do want you to do this drill, this practice, whatever, to learn how to get more opaque and more light. So the value of your color, this is value right here, the darkness to lightness, okay? Same color, just more water, all right? Okay, so moving on from that, I'm sorry I forgot to do that. I had this and I totally forgot that I was going to do that. These are some other things that I was working on, like this is color dropping. This is the center of a sunflower, by the way. Let's work on some leaves, shall we? Okay, so we worked on our belly tip brush. If you want to do a bigger leaf, get a bigger brush, okay? So I'm actually going to do that. Let me grab a bigger brush. This is a size 12 brush, okay? So I'm going to mix a green. I want to get a little bit of that in there. Oh, that's beautiful. Get a little bit more. And then we're going to take a little bit of red and a little bit of blue. And then a little bit of this yellow. There we go. We're going to I think we're going to deal with color mixing in another video, because I don't
say that almost needs to be a whole separate video.
Well, I was going to include it, but I think it's going to be too much. So yeah. If you want me to do a video on how you mix colors, let me know, because I can go in depth with color theory and color mixing. I made this color wheel that we can go over. I think that'll be for another video, because I don't want to overwhelm you with too much in this first one. Okay, so leaves. All right, so we're gonna do tip, belly, tip. I need a little bit more water. It looks a little dry, so I got water and then brushed it on the side of the cup. Tip, belly, tip. Now, if you want to add, we're gonna get a little bit more pigment, a little bit more darkness to one side of your leaf. Or let's say I wanna get a little bit of yellow in there. You can just add while it's wet. And then you have this beautiful two-tone, and it's gonna, as it dries, you'll see it'll look a little bit different as it dries, but these two colors are kind of meshing together. And hopefully you can start to see the way you can use these techniques to paint things. Okay, I want to paint a full-on flower now so you can see start to finish. We'll finish off the video painting an actual flower. What flower should I do, Kylie?
Do a daisy, because it's doing the belly tip thing.
Okay.
So
yeah, we'll expand on that. Okay, perfect. So we're gonna do a daisy. Now, there's several ways you can do a daisy, but this is just how I'm gonna do it, okay? I'm gonna take yellow first. I don't really have a clean spot anywhere. I need to clean a spot. All right, so just to see what my yellow is looking like, I'm gonna put it here. That's a very thick viscosity of white yellow. All right, so I'm gonna paint just a little circle for the center of my daisy. And then what I wanna do is add a little bit of shadowing to that. So I'm gonna take a brown, gonna mix it with that yellow. So I've got a little bit brown, a little bit of yellow. I know this is off screen, sorry. And then make sure my brush has a little bit of water on it, and I'm just going to tap that brown on the edge, okay? And that's gonna blend it in. It's giving you a little shadow around that center, okay? I'm gonna do a daisy, and I'm not gonna do a white daisy because it would be hard for you to see. You just use a very light gray, and then you go with your layered details on top with a darker gray. But we're gonna do a colored one just because I want you to be able to see this, okay? So what color should we do? Should we do a pink daisy? A blue daisy? An orange daisy? What do you want?
Pink.
Pink daisy. Okay. I want to do pink, but I want to make a little bit different of a pink than this here. So let's mix some of these colors. Woo! That looks very rosy.
It's very pigmented.
Yeah, that one was, so I mean, every shade is different. I'm going to tap a little bit of this. Oh, yeah. A little bit more of that turquoisey color. Beautiful. Okay. So this brush is actually a little bit big for a daisy petal. So I'm gonna go back to my size 4 round brush. All right, so I got it wet. I am swirling around in this beautiful pink shade. I am twisting my brush to get a nice tip. Now, if this is still wet, your petals are going to bleed into your center, and that's fine. There are different styles. If you don't want it to bleed, make sure it's dry all the way. If you don't mind, go right ahead. So we're gonna start at the tip, belly, and tip. And there is a beautiful little daisy petal. We're gonna do that all the way around. And you can kind of curve some. If they're all like perfectly straight and symmetrical, it's not gonna look natural, okay? And you don't have to go around like this. Sometimes I switch it up. I turn my page to make it easier. But I'll like do one on this side and then fill it in. Whatever floats your boat. Okay. Just like that. You can do different darknesses of petals too. You can have a darker one, a lighter one. So this paper, so annoying. The reason it did a little thing right there is because there's water left over on it. I'm trying to soak that up. There's nothing wrong with having those like that, but so these are going to be dry because this paper is drying so fast, so I can't do the wet on wet technique. But let's see if I can do one. Oh, I don't even know if I was in frame on that last bit. So I'm gonna do a petal, and then I'm gonna take some of that pigment and tap it. I hate this paper. It's not blending, is it? It's drying already. Holy cow. Okay, that's okay. We can do our details on wet on dry. Getting the right water ratio on this paper.
I've been spoiled by
Yep, spoiled by cotton paper. But anyways, this is just a simple little flower, and then you can, whoops, fill in those gaps. You can layer them, or you can have them simple, just one on each pot, but however you want your daisy to look is totally fine, okay? And again, we are just practicing. We're not doing a grand painting or anything. Just practice those strokes and make a little daisy, okay? Not the best flower in the world, but just getting the principles down. I'm gonna let that dry a second, and then we'll do some details to make it look a little better. Okay, so this is dry now. So again, this is not the best flower I've done, but it's totally fine. We're just going to show you how you can add details once this is dry. Ooh, the camera's shaking. Show you how you add details once it's dry. So again, we're gonna go back into that same pink. We got fairly medium density of pink here, and then I'm going to wipe off extra, I almost said fluid, water. That's really not a good word. And then I'm going to take just the very tip and do some light strokes just down the center of some of these petals. And if it's too wet or too thick, just wipe it off on your paper towel a little bit. We're just going to add some very, very light details, and then I'm going to curve some very, very faint lines coming from the top of these petals. Just adding a little bit of detail. Okay. That's all I'm going to do for that. Again, we will go in more detail with different things once we get the basics down, but I want you to practice all these things. Go back through these drills. Do these a few different times. Do these on some other days, like once your brain has reset, try it again. Go through these a few times, get the brush strokes down, get the techniques down, and then we'll move on to some more advanced techniques and learn some more fun things. We're going to learn how to do some roses. We're going to learn how to paint all kinds of fun things in different styles, so you can learn the style of painting that you like to do. Yeah, we'll get to other like fun techniques where we learn how to do different things.
I love that.
Yes, but I just wanted to show you the basics. I just wanted you to know how to start, basically, how to get started with watercolor, and this is what you need to start with. This is what you need to start by learning. And I really want to go over color mixing next time, so maybe in the next video on watercolors I will go over color mixing and how you can make the colors that you're wanting to. Alright guys, so those are all the watercolor basics that you need to know to get started. I hope that you enjoyed this. I hope that you found this helpful, whether you are a beginner or whether you've been painting for a little while. I hope that you learned something, or at least were entertained by my craziness, because that happens sometimes. A little crazy. But we will build on this in future videos. If there's something specific that you want me to cover, please let me know in the comments. Kylie will be appearing again, probably on the next video. She's a little bit more camera shy than I am, so I have to like twist her arm to get her on camera, but we will do another video. Wait, here's her arm. Let's twist it. Twist it! I'm thinking another art haul next, so if there is a specific art store you want us to visit, let me know. We are in the Dallas area, so yeah. That is gonna wrap it up for this video. I hope that you enjoyed this so much. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already and you want to see those crazy future videos, hit that subscribe button down below, and we will see you guys next time. Bye.
It sounds like you're teaching a class.
That's good. They're both used?
It's medium.
Because you say mixed media.
Yeah.
Oh, is medium one media is more than one?
I think it is.
Ha!
I think it is.
I just stumbled upon it.
Because if it's your medium, but mixed media is probably the
plural of medium, which sounds weird. Anyways.
Do you know how to animation markies?
No, you do.
Okay. Good to know.
Okay. So, water paint logo. Me on the back of that. I didn't know if it still showed with this here.
I can see two of your faces.
Oh, it's recording? So I'm gonna, no, I'm not gonna tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna do it. Okay. What was I saying? Let's start that bit over. First of all, water. Is that a good intro? Should I do an outro too? And here we go. Okay, what am I gonna say? I haven't thought about that far because I haven't done the rest of the video. Alright guys, so I hope that was Kylie, like I see my face in the lens and then I see your face right next to it and it's kind of trippy. Like I need to show you this. It's kind of funny.